Yeah.
fun.
So, yeah, I think yes, I'm just very interested to see how it's all going to work out. That's yeah.
For me, I don't like for the primary school kids, whatever, a little bit. Like
Yeah.
even I get the stresses, and I have them like particularly with Luca around that we just got settled and we were starting more academic stuff and now we're back. But I kind of go, that's obviously what was meant to happen because it's happened. And, you know, sometimes I kind of feel like I can't remember who said it. I was listening to a podcast one day and they were talking around how when we wish things were another way, like that we wish that, you know, this never happened and that we wish that they had continued with school and we wished all these other things, but it's kind of like going outside and going, son, I would not like you there anymore. I would like you back here an hour or forward an hour, and going, son, you're in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
You know, to go, I wish the sun was, you know, more in this direction or something, right? We're not all powerful enough to do that. So why do we feel we're all powerful enough to go, I'm going to, you know, wish what was happening to be a different way? It's happening.
Yeah, that's it. You can't do anything to change what's happening. And I think, I think it depends on the student. Like I know that there's a lot of people that are quite worried about catching up and those types of things. And, you know, if your son or daughter struggles a lot, then they'll still have to catch up. There'll still be, you know, they will lose a lot more than a lot of other kids, you know, that can pick up quite quickly. So I think it'd be really, I'm sort of one of those people. I'm into the two different camps about it. Because, you know, like we've been encouraging people with tutoring that, you know, we want them to continue their tutoring because they're coming to us and they're struggling. So we want them to continue with that. But then, you know, like if at the end of the day, it's just hard. It's really hard. But like you said, we can't change it.
Yeah.
We have to live in what it's currently doing. So
yeah. Well, I was thinking about like when we first started back, Monday, fortnight ago, whenever that was, whatever day, they all go into one. And we're starting to get back into it. And it was like, we're kind of going to do this a bit better this time. And even with all the experience of homeschooling last year, and there was still these kind of hurdles for the two, like not so much Dean, he's really keen, right? And wants to do it and settle down and do it straight away. And there's not the resistance like there is with Luca. And I was just finding that my frustration levels were going up. His frustration levels were going up. It was hard. There was just these constant ruptures in our relationship. And they were over little things, you know, like trying to ascertain, are you finding this really hard and you don't understand? Or as my inner voice was saying, he's just being silly to delay this because he doesn't want to do it. He's waiting for me just to give him the answer because he knows I will at some point, just so we can get to, not mine, I didn't set this up, he set it up, that after he'd done his work, he could have some YouTube time. So it's his set reward. It's not, you know, parentally imposed, you know, consequence reward thing. He doesn't respond to them, and it's not a parenting thing that I would necessarily promote, but he'd set it up and he'd, you know, made it. So I'm like, I'm going to support you in defining what your currency is, and that's at the moment YouTube. So I'm like, is he just doing this so he gets YouTube quicker because he knows I'm going to get frustrated and go, you know, 6 + 4, what is it? 6, what is it? 6 + it's 10, you know. Right, 10. And is that the problem, or is it that you really are finding it hard, so you're being, you know, again, my interpretation, silly, maybe not what is internally happening for him. And it was just this constant, and I had those two voices in my head the whole time, right, which probably added to my confusion, going, this is so frustrating. I know he can do this. He's just delay tactics here. going, and then this other voice is going, that's just your perception, that's maybe not the truth, he might actually be finding this hard, you know, you getting frustrated is not going to help him. And, you know, it was just this cycle.
Yeah.
And it got to the point that I'm like, I'm not doing, like, you know, I'm not going to continue this today in the way that we're doing it. We're going to stop. We went off and we played a game for half an hour, and we came back, both of us feeling refreshed, and we got it done.
Yeah. And I think that's important though, because I think a lot of parents are setting the expectations up is that they should, like you said, like, do they not understand it, or are they just trying to get what they want to do? But, you know, it's a completely different situation to school as well. Kids are used to their routine at school. They're used to, you know, how the classroom runs. And I feel like it's putting a lot of pressure on parent and children relationships a lot. And a lot of parents obviously second guessing themselves and like, just like, nah, can't do it. And because at the end of the day, your relationship with your child is more important than trying to get some maths or some English and stuff done. Yes, it's interesting. Like, you're not alone in that. I've heard, you know, lots of parents, and that's why I think it'll be interesting when we go back to school. Like, if your child has been struggling with, you know, getting the work done or getting parts of the work done, and even if they're naturally, you know, they're hard to get to school in the first place, then the 1 day a week is going to be interesting to see how they go with that.
I think I've had lots of families that I've been working with too, even if they come for couples therapy and it's not family therapy, inevitably we will talk about the kids. And for some of them it's semi-common around the fact that a lot of the kids are saying, actually, I really like homeschooling. This actually really works for me. Can we continue this? You know, and for some of those kids, it probably would really benefit them, right? And they're going, I don't want to go back to school. I really like this. I want this to continue. And the parents, and some of them are going, actually, like, I'm now seeing you in a better and different light. And I'm, exploring my own stuff around education and learning. And maybe now my ethics and morals more fit with homeschooling than, you know, mainstream or even some alternate schools. And but how do I fit that my morals, and I'm realizing that some of my morals are changing here, or my belief systems are changing here with, but I really love my work, and how do I be selfish and want to do my work, because I can't do my work and homeschool you. And how do we do that? So that'll be interesting too, because I think all the kids that are loving homeschooling and loving that freedom that comes with that, particularly if they're anxious children, to be going back into school, to go, you firstly, if my anchor and safe person is my parent, you're taking me away from my parent. I've now had this different experience. Normal was I just got over it and I got on at school, but I have now this new experience of, no, we can do this at home. I think there's going to be some extra fun dynamics around that too.
I've been seeing like a lot of forums and things that I'm a part of, just trying to see what parents are thinking for education, those types of things. A lot of it is around, you know, there's quite a number of people that are like, hey, homeschool is actually working better for my kid. And, you know, like you said, like that could be the child that's really anxious to go to school. And so being at home is alleviating that anxious feeling that they're feeling. Or also, like, I've had a lot of conversations with like year 11 and 12 students, and they have been enjoying it more because they're getting more work done. Even a couple of other students who I have one family that I tutor, and you know, the son is one of the kids that would sometimes cause issues in the classroom and those types of things, but they've really been enjoying homeschooling because he doesn't have the distraction.
Yeah.
And so he's getting through the work that might normally take him, you know, 1 or 2 lessons to do quicker because he's concentrating to get it done.
Yeah.
And so I think, yeah, it'd be very, very interesting to see what happens with the dynamics when we go back.
Yeah.
Even things like, is the percentage of homeschoolers going to go up? Is that going to change? Are they going to get more applications through for parents homeschooling?
The forums that I'm in because of homeschooling last year, by all accounts, they are.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying too.
Yeah. Even when we enrolled and had our assessment last year, she said, like, in our area, the stats are, like, even before all this happened, were quite dramatically increasing. So I think there will be a whole lot of families now that go, you know, whether it's even employing a tutor or a nanny who does that so they can still go to work.
Yeah.
I think there will possibly be a increase, and that our world is changing so much. For me, I love your opinion on this too, that our education isn't designed for the world of even pre-COVID, really. So post, it'll be interesting to go, the actual education system needs such a revamp and a re-looking at the skills that we actually need to be teaching our kids. Yeah. You know, to go, we don't even know now what the world is going to look like after, or what employment will look like after, to go, what are we teaching our kids then? Yeah. For a world that we don't know.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you say that as well, because I mean, there's been a lot of talk about changing, say, the primary school curriculum and things again, which, I mean, realistically, that was only changed, like, I think, was it 20, I can't remember the year. It wasn't that long ago that they actually put together the Australian curriculum, which for some reason New South Wales has their own version of that curriculum. I can't quite get my head around it, but I can see that talk coming through again to see like what skills are we actually teaching and are they relevant. And I think though it's so hard because you're throwing in a lot of cases a group of people together that probably aren't in the classroom either to make those decisions. I think it raises a lot of questions around things like homework and stuff too, which is interesting to say, because I mean, a lot of the learning at home stuff I've seen that kids are being given, it's more of that worksheet homework model rather than, like, we could be doing project based and those types of learning, or even you know, we've all had to use technology now, so we've all had to try and use that in our kids' learning, but that's presenting that we've actually got a whole lot of other gaps that we are not actually focusing on for our kids. So I don't even
for our teachers too, right? In terms of their education, in terms of teacher education, because there's been a few like principals or assistant principals that I've been talking to, and they're going, our staff have actually had to really learn how to deliver online learning. And it's interesting. Like, I'm talking to the class that's here and I'm going to ask them questions and I'm going to do long explanations, and they're like, no.
Work. Yeah, that's
all these distractions at home, the dog's there, your bike's there, you know, like they're not. And
it's interesting because one of the things that is in, like, that teachers are supposed to be teaching is that 21st century skill. So learning for the 21st century, learning online, they're supposed to be embedding that in their teaching anyway. So it's really thrown it on the head to say, well, have you actually been teaching how to do things in the 21st century, or have you just been teaching how to search online or do like an online museum visit or something where it's not particularly using that skill? And I mean, I think that's something that parents need to be considering as well, because I can also see that there's a lot of negative things coming through about teachers and what they're setting and those types of things, that they're also forgetting that their whole system has been turned on its head overnight. Like, and it really was overnight. The same for us, like at the tutoring centre, we went from 1 week doing all face-to-face, and it got to about Thursday of that week, and I was like, oh, it's not looking real good. I'll just have to put some, I think I did some Loom videos or something on just a couple of things like Zoom and how to use it.
Yeah.
By the next Monday, we were like, sessions this afternoon can be face-to-face, but it's all got to be online from tomorrow. So that flip was quite dramatic, and it was quite dramatic for teachers too. Yeah. But in saying that as well, like, perhaps it's also a good thing because it's getting teachers to reflect on their lessons and what they're providing kids and how they're providing it as well.
Yeah.
And it's not a criticism on teachers, but I found when I was teaching in schools that there were quite a number of teachers that didn't do that reflection. Like they didn't look at how their class was interacting with something. It was sort of still just worksheet based and not the teaching that our kids really need. So I don't know.
I think it's on two fronts, right? Like, yes, like so much compassion actually should be given to them because that, right, that flip that they had to do. But who's to say that, it's showing and highlighting lacks of what's maybe happening in our classrooms, but also their training on actually how to be teachers is also something that needs revamping, right? Because to go, we all expect it, but are they even being taught at uni, to go, how you deliver a Zoom class or a Google Classroom is really different to how you do a live one.
Yeah.
To, a blank screen versus, 20 to 30 kids, in a classroom. Yeah. And I think maybe for the classrooms that have open plan learning, this shift would be massive too, right? To go, we were 90 kids in a space, multiple teachers. And I think now to go, well, some of them are still having to do face-to-face learning and also do, the Google Classroom or the Zoom lessons on the online learning to go and prepare all the worksheets that have to come home, and hats off to them.
And that's massively, and it's really interesting that you brought up, like, is the things that they're learning at uni relevant to the classroom? Like until maybe like middle last year, all of my tutors in the centre were qualified teachers, and I was really specific that that's who I wanted, but at the end of the day that was really hard to maintain. So I have a number of uni students now, and a few of them are actually doing their teaching degrees at the moment, and that's sort of some of the conversations I've said to them was, realistically, there's a lot of things in your uni degree that you don't even use, do you? And it's not showing them how to actually use these skills for the 21st century, or how to adapt to an online or adapt to something that's changing in your classroom. In so many ways, I learned everything that I know now when I was in the actual classroom, and didn't have that breathing space to really delve into it. And one of the things I'm really passionate about is, learning difficulties. So at uni, I think there's only like 1 or 2 subjects that you might do about learning difficulties, but it's all a brush over the surface, and it's not what you need in the classroom. And
it's the same, right? Because I did my primary school teaching, and when I got that degree, and to go, do I feel confident to go out into a classroom and actually teach? And I was like, no. And that's why I went, exactly for that reason, went and started my master's in special education for that reason, because I thought, let's be honest, most of the kids in the class are going to have something on some level of that spectrum.
That's it.
Whatever that's going to look like. And to be able to teach effectively, and the level of perfectionism that I wanted to bring to that, to go, yeah, now throw in that it's all these extra components, hard
That's
work.
it. And that's the thing, like I'm now doing my graduate certificate in learning difficulties, but realistically, that whole extra section, you know, the extra year that it would take to do that needs to be actually a full year in uni course when you start teaching.
Yeah.
Because like you said, you don't have 30 kids in the room that are all have no problems. They're all on that scale somewhere. They are all struggling with something, but you're expected as a teacher to be able to cope with all of those differences in your classroom with no problems, with no worries, without even a lot of support. And see, when you were saying about, you know, teaching, like what support do teachers get as well? You know, they get their professional development days, or they get, you know, to go and do a few courses here and there throughout the year. But then once you've gone to that course, you don't get the time to think about it and implement it really into the classroom, into the degree that it needs to be. Really, you know, and I mean, you know, professional development days, like if you're not falling asleep in the back of the staff room, you know, some of them, and it's probably because they're trying to put so much in there at once, and it's the first day back and everyone's tired and all of those different combinations. But realistically, like unless your faculty was like every faculty meeting trying to implement these things that they wanted in the school, it just doesn't happen. Like it's great to be given the information, but there's not much implementing. And see, a lot of those things were like classroom management, but not actually how to teach more effectively, or, you know, things that are relevant to that actual classroom. It's more that administration stuff that teachers get bogged down into.
And I think from my perspective, a lot of it is around the academics, and we have that full spectrum of that, what comes with that, let alone that you add into that on top of it, overlaid probably, their mental and emotional health. Right. And then the spectrum that can come with. And to go, you know, how do we then look at that as well? And to go,
and they don't look at it though, because to look at the emotional impact, you need to have done things like a counselling degree, or, you know, for mental health. But realistically, teachers are dealing with that in every single classroom with every single kid. And they're just not given the skills because it's that academic base. Like you learn how to read the curriculum and figure out what outcomes you're using and what your topic or subject looks like and what things you're doing in the classroom.
How to write a lesson plan.
You learn that. That's all well and good. But, you know, if I've had kids in the back of my classroom before. I had one kid that was on the back of my classroom floor, basically rocking in the corner. You know, was I given the tools as a teacher? No. How do you deal with that if you haven't come up against that yourself either? And because you're focused on the content, you're focused on rather than the well-being of students. And see, that's something that again that they need to start putting more focus. I mean, I think it's good that there's a lot more discussion around mental health and the impacts that, you know, things like anxiety and depression and home lives and those types of things have on youth. I think it's really positive that there is a lot more discussion and a lot more outspoken support there. But there still needs to be, how are teachers coping with that, and how are teachers being given the skills to deal with that in your classroom? Because if you have Joe in the back of the classroom swinging off the fans, and you have another one climbing out the window to do something, and you have someone crying in the back corner, and you're trying to deliver a lesson, you know, you're trying to manage all of these different things. that you're not given the tools in how to do that appropriately in the classroom environment.
Yeah. I was listening to, I don't know if you've heard of her, Alison Davies, who does, she's a music therapist, and she's on the spectrum. She's autistic, and I think at least one of her children's also autistic, and she runs great courses on, you know, brain development and how all that happens. And I love how she said one day around that rather than, and I think it's applicable to parenting too, rather than looking at the behavior. So if we have 30 kids and they've all got 10 behaviors, right? Yeah. That's a lot of behaviors that a teacher has to think about managing, right? Mm. But if we just took the focus off the behavior and the behavior management and went, actually, I've got 30 brains and I just need to think about their brain care. That's all I need to think about is I've got 30 brains, not, you know, 300 or 3,000, you know, or, you know, 3 million, depending on what kind of class you have, behaviors, then I need to manage, which is, that would be overwhelming to even consider. But if I just got 20 or 30 kids in my class and all I'm thinking about is their brain and what's happening in that little brain, and I care for that, that's much more manageable to think about and to go. But still a lot to know about each of those individual brains in terms of sensory processing and things like that. But it's still, I just have to think about their brain and what their brain needs and where their brain is at and what are my expectations. Is that even applicable to that brain?
Yeah. And because a lot of the time the behavior is associated with something that they're struggling with or that their brain is struggling with to cope with. You know, if you've got a kid crying in the classroom because a friend has said something horrible to them, well, like that is just the reaction to something that has happened. So like you said, like thinking about what types of care does that brain need then, you know, what support do they need to assist? You know, the kid that's flying off the ceiling on the fans might not understand what the task is asking them to do. So that's a defective behavior. So it's really interesting. I'll have to look at that podcast and have a listen.
What would you suggest to parents that are finding, because they're the ones that are now having to parent and teach, that they may be seeing, oh, my child actually is struggling in this area, or what could be going on here that, you know, their brother or their sister at the same age was further ahead than where they are now, and they're seeing that their child's learning could be supported. Yeah. What kind of steps would you suggest that parents would go through to kind of get that explored?
Yeah, well, I think firstly, like the situation that we're in, it could possibly just be that your child is struggling to cope with the at home, at school. So that's the first thing that I would just be thinking about. But I mean, realistically, like I think, and this sounds, I don't know if it sounds a bit strange, but you just got to be careful with who you're going to ask for support, because if you go to, say, an OT and ask what they would suggest, then they're going to say, oh yeah, you need this. Or if, and it's not saying anything against them, but it's the same as, you know, if you go to a speechy or a speech therapist, and they will be automatically trying to weave you in this location. I think the tricky thing for parents is that a lot of the time teachers have their hands tied as well. So teachers in your school can't say your child needs this. They might do it in an underhanded way, but they're not allowed to really say that you need to go do this, this and this. And it's the same. So like I obviously run a tutoring centre, but part of my centre and part of the things that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do a lot more of that educational consultancy and trying to build those connections for parents so that they have support and they can find who to go to. And because you're going to Google it, you'll Google it and it'll come up with 1,000 different people and won't make a difference. And,
Yeah.
you know, we sometimes see kids that come in and they've been tested for this and this and this and this and this. They've just been tested to the hills. They're exhausted from being tested, and there's still no results, you know. So that's my first thing, is just like, be careful of where you go to figure out what is actually happening for your kid. A lot of the times, a lot of the different, you know, like behavioral optometry, OT, you know, each of the different sects will have, you know, like an online sort of tick and flick chart. Sometimes those things are good, like they will help you to determine exactly what things your kid is struggling with, so that you can make a bit more of an informed decision. Because I think a lot of the times, like, you know, you might go, oh, like, I just think I might try this just because that seems to be like a good option at the time, and those types of things. But I think trying to find someone that is objective and on the outside is like a good thing to be thinking about, that they can objectively, even you know, things like an educational psychologist report. If you're really concerned and there are massive gaps, then they will be able to actually tell you where those gaps specifically are. It's expensive. That's the only, you know, thing, to go and get an educational psychologist report. But in their recommendations, they will recommend, you know, different things that might help your child. If it depends again, like if it's skills, so if it's your child is just struggling with general, you know, schoolwork, so it's not specific, it's like quite general across the board, then, you know, perhaps a tutor is a good person to go to, because they can assist with that skill and that skill development. If it's, you know, and so this is like, everyone does something different. Like your behavioral optometry does something completely different to if you're going to someone for an early diagnosis, or they do something completely different to a normal optometrist. And so it's trying to figure out exactly what is happening for your child.
And I think there's also then those dynamics, because we've done that, right? We've done the early and we've done the behavioural. And there's sometimes their own prejudices around alternate or, you know, outside things to go, we wouldn't support that, or, you know, and if you're going to them, it's kind of like, well, I'm not the professional, and I see something else is going on here, and my gut is telling me something, but I'm not the professional and you are, so now what do I believe? Or now what do I do? And sometimes it is just going, I'm just going to do my gut.
And you have to. And see, like, you have to follow your instinct. Like if you, and like you know, I'm an Erlen screener, so I'm not a diagnostician, but I'm a screener. I was just trying to find my red lenses that I normally wear. So I myself wear red lenses. But that also relates to, you know, I found out last year that I have elements of ADHD and all of those types of things, and they all interlink together. So it's, and I think that's something that parents need to remember as well, that it's not just one thing. Like, it can actually be a whole range of different things that is going on for your kids. And unfortunately, that might mean that you do need to go to a whole range of different specialists to find those solutions. And it's not just going to be one solution. And I know that's really hard for people to get their head around. But like you said, like behavioral optometry, like when I was first had like glasses when I was 7, I did behavioral optometry. So I you know, had a go at that, you know, go to different optometrists, tell you different things. For me, like my Erlen lenses made the biggest difference for me, even things with just concentration or being able to see it on a screen. But like you said, a lot of the time you go to them and they've got their own agenda. And then you're just left with all of these pieces and you're still not sure. You're still not sure. But I think Yeah, like you've just got to go with your gut, like, you know, as a parent. But I think also there's and the complicated thing is that there is so many different associations and different things set up. So, you know, you go and have a look at, you know, the Dyslexia Association, for example. No offense to them, but they have a really strong view on what works and what doesn't work, and this program works and that program doesn't, and that system does and this doesn't, and da 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 da. But I think you've got to be really open-minded as a parent, because those alternative things a lot of the time work. They might not work for everyone though, and so that's the other thing. Like it's not designed to work for everyone. But you've got to go with what you're thinking, and try and not think about, well, this association says that's not the right thing to do, so I can't go down that road. And this one says that's not the right thing and I can't go down that road. You've just got to really, and because I mean that's bias as well, like they're being funded from somewhere, so there's bias in what they're providing. So I think that you've just got to be really objective as a parent and be thinking about that bias. You know, it's like we watch the news every day and we take in everything that the news people tell us, and we don't always think about, well, hang on, they've actually got an agenda that they're trying to, you know, get across to us, and they're trying to weave this story over here and those types of things. And I mean, we teach, like I taught when we did history, like history teaching, you know, you teach about bias and the sources and the, you know, those types of things. But I think you just have to be really objective, and do your research and talk to people. So try and talk to people who have used it, and those types of discussions. There's no straight answer. I think that's
I think sometimes, like, I only heard about early in terms of at a business conference, and a geneticist was there. Like, I'm not presenting, she was just somebody in the business group that was there, and she had coloured lenses on. And I asked her, because she actually had two, like one when she was doing work that was closer, and then a different colour, like at different times. I think it was when she was more looking at the stage or something. And I said, I've noticed, like, you're wearing different colours. Like, what's that about? Knowing fair well that out of these 300 people that are in the room, that there are a lot that have dyslexia. Own multiple $1 million businesses, right? And going, I really like being in this room, because a lot of the time, having come from the teaching world and things like that, and knowing myself struggling with, you know, English, to go, a lot of that messaging around when you struggle with English is you're not going to be much, right? It's not, you know, and to go, no, these people can't, you know, they're still struggling with where and whens and theirs and all that. Or just quite what you would think is basic spelling, but they're still highly successful people. So it was only through her, and that's years of being in the education world and working with kids, and it was the first time that I'd ever heard of it. And even in terms of, we've heard of dyslexia, but not even now, I can't even think of the word that's went, like dyslexia for maths.
Dyscalculia.
Like I never even heard of that. And to even have thought that can still struggle for some kids, that they can have that same thing with numbers. You know,
there's another two. There's another dyspraxia, and there's another, I can't remember the last one, but they're all part of the same association. But you're right, like it doesn't enter your mind that, because it's not spoken about, and it's but it's also hidden. So it's like the loudest voice. So you hear the loudest voice, you hear the people that are super loud. So like the group that does MSL, the multisensory language learning, although we do that anyway, like we, you know, when you're learning through multisensory things, but they're advocates of dyslexia and advocates of Erlen. And they're very, very loud about that. So everyone's hearing the loudest thing. Like I actually never came across Erlen until I think it was my last year of teaching.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we had 2 kids, because I was a year advisor, had 2 kids come through my year that had colour lenses.
Mm-hmm.
And they hadn't had them before. They just came with the colour lenses.
Yeah.
One of the kids I had in my own class, and he was one of the kids that can't sit down, and you know, you would call him a naughty child. He didn't do his work, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So he came into my classroom, and I'd received all the information about Erlen in my pigeonhole earlier.
Yeah.
And for the first time, he sat in his seat.
Yeah.
He had his glasses, he sat in his seat, and he concentrated. He did his work. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what on earth is this? And what on earth, like, but I never heard about it before.
No.
And I remember reading the whole sheet and going, oh, wow, that's fascinating. And just in the back of my mind going, oh, I'm pretty sure I wrote it down in like my diary at that time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to look into that. And it wasn't until I actually left teaching that, and it was right at I was working with one of my tutoring students, and they were really struggling. But it wasn't dyslexia. So like, it wasn't, they were struggling putting sounds and pulling words apart and, you know, phonemes and all of that.
Yeah.
They weren't struggling with that language aspect, because they could pull it apart. They could see what the word was. It was that they were stumbling. Every word that they were looking at, they were squinting at it and looking at it like it was strange, and it wasn't fluent, and it was really, and so I can't even remember, but on the back of my mind I was like, oh, and I looked it up, and that's how I like became an Erlen screener myself. Was that I was like, hey, this could actually really help with some kids. But like you said, like, there's more than the people in the room. And I think a lot of the time we're trying to pigeonhole like people into the one thing. So like, oh, it's dyslexia. It's just dyslexia. That's it. That's all it is. And this is going to fix it.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, Erlen in particular gets it gets confused for a whole range of different things. You know, it can be confused for ADHD, it can be confused for dyslexia, or it can be a combination of all of those things that the child has.
Yes.
That's really interesting that they had different colours for looking close and looking further away. That's because it's and I think like there's been a lot of research about neuroplasticity of the brain. Have you like heard any of that research?
That stuff.
And so I think a lot of that has, and like looking at how the brain's processing different things, it's making it clearer that there's a big crossover between these. But again, like you just have to realize that it's going to be more than one. No, that's fascinating. It always makes me so, and I like live it. You know, I see the difference it makes and I research it, but it still really excites me. And I think that, you know, and I think that's hard as well, like, because I really want parents to be able to come and have a chat with me. And like I said, like the educational consultancy, I want to be able to show them that, you know, it is a whole range of different things that could be going on. But obviously they look at me because I'm a tutoring business and I do Erlen, that I do have biases, which I don't like. And it sounds ridiculous. Of course you have a bias against it because you do that, or you can earn money off that. But I really don't. Like if a student comes to me and I think that they need to see an OT or they need to see a speech, I will say that, you know, if I don't think you need tutoring, then I will tell you don't need tutoring. Because I think parents need that clarity, and because there's so many, and it's just getting more like more research gets done. Let's term this new thing. Let's make this new program. There is so much out there. It's like a crowded marketplace that you just don't know where to go.
Well, I think it comes down to probably business values and things too, because mine, I have a similar one, right? Like, if a parent finds me, say, through like the local mums Facebook group or something, and there'll be a bit of, you know, like a DM back and forth or an email back and forth. And if I feel that I'm not the right therapist for them, or that their child isn't actually the one that needs the therapy, that the parents more need the support, or it's not the parents, it is the children, whatever it is, I'll go, actually, I think it's more this, or I don't actually think I'm the right person for you. I would actually be suggesting this other local person, or it's not really therapy that you need, it's OT, or it's speech therapy, or, you know, go to your pediatrician. And I'm not normally, like, I can't label as professionally, but I'm not a labeler normally. And it's kind of like, I think it would help all of you if there was a label, not to be prescriptive on them, but to then go, you kind of have a reason of what's happening. Yeah. And then that's their superpower, and then we can move forward. Yeah. Because some of them sometimes it's more the parents need it to kind of go, okay, now I can understand.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing. And it's interesting, like, we have, you know, some parents that come through and they don't want the label because they don't want their kid to be pigeonholed into something at school and those types of things. But if we receive a label, like if you're teaching in a school and you know, find out that this child, you know, struggles with, say it is dyslexia, and there's a diagnosis and there's, you know, clear guidelines on what's going to help them, that's only going to benefit the child in the classroom environment. You know, it's the same as if they need the OT assistance, and then that's going to benefit the child. So even though we might be afraid of it being a label, sometimes we need those labels, to relieve pressure of parents as well, because sometimes I feel that parents think it's all their fault and that they have done something wrong, and that's why their child is struggling. So I think when you receive that label or that diagnosis, it does lift that off a bit, but also then you can, like, find out the best way to support your kid at home and outside, and, you know, in the shopping centre and at school and in the sports. Like, it's all there to benefit your kids, which is, you know.
And I think that's the clincher. Like, I think some people, like you said before, like, and it's probably our intention and our energy that comes with it, right? Am I taking you to all these people and all these things to find out what's wrong with you? Or am I taking you to people to find out how I can best support you? And if I kind of think about, if you've heard of Dan Siegel's concept of the wheel of awareness.
I've heard bits and pieces of it.
And that's where I go, that's what a label is for me. It is one of our spokes. It's not our whole wheel. It's one spoke. And that's it. And then our children are their human beingness of all of that. And dyslexia or ADHD or autism or sensory processing, whatever it is, right, is one of their superpowers.
That's it. And then it doesn't define who they are. It doesn't define what they're going to do. It's just there to assist. And I mean, I think the other thing is, though, if you're a parent that is taking your kid everywhere and to here and here and here, you also have to consider that sometimes it's too much. And that there is a point where you have to stop for the sake of your child, you know. If your child's and read, like, I'm not saying just stop and never look at it again, but stop and give them a bit of breathing space, because it could just be developmental. It could just be where they're at that time. But then if you still feel that they're still struggling as they, you know, keep going, then re-enter. Like, it's so hard though. Like, we've had, you know, people that have come in and they've done everything. But then when they're entering into our space, instead of allowing the tutors to do what they can like actually tutor, why they're paying them. We have the parents sitting there and, oh no, do this. So like undermining things. So then you've got to be aware of that too. Like if you're taking a child somewhere and then you're sitting in the room and undermining what the professional is trying to do, then that's also not going to help, it's not going to be effective. But yeah, I think the wheel of awareness is a massive thing that we need to consider. And I think as well, like a lot of times parents think that when there is a diagnosis and that's the only thing that anyone is going to see, and that their child's not going to get these opportunities because they have this. And whereas looking at it in terms of, well, my child is going to be able to get the support that they really need to help them grow. But like, I think that, and the thing is that we often don't consider that there are so many pieces of our own identity either, or ourselves, or we're only thinking about this section rather than all of it. Which is, it's all important.
I think, like, for me, there's also the element of what we bring when we're looking at our kids, and why we sometimes, it has nothing to do with the child, but we're searching for something, and that's why we're doing all of this stuff. But we have to kind of take a moment of our own self-reflection and go, why is this important to me?
And I think because the more people you go to and the more things that it isn't, or the more you're right, like a lot of the time it's the parent trying to search for something, to try and make sense of something. But like I've screened some kids for Erlen before, where the parents sitting there and going, oh my gosh, like that's everything that I struggle with, that they have tried to forget, or tried to, they've come up with their coping mechanisms. It's the same as dyslexia or dyscalculia. Like we all come up with coping mechanisms so that we can function. And it's not until we're sitting there going, right, that's actually
it could have been so much easier for me. Like
that's the whole thing, isn't it? Like that would make so much sense as to what happened and why, and even like the little things, like it's such a slippery slope, and I think that's the main thing. Like it's so hard to know, because you want to do the right thing for your kids. That's just we all do. We all want to do the right thing for our kids. But I also think that sometimes we're just so focused on finding that solution that sometimes that's you can't be focusing on that. Like you can't be solely focusing on that solution, and the solution will come when the time is right. I don't know. Sometimes I don't make much sense.
You're making sense.
It's just one of those things. It's just one of the things that I'm really passionate about, and I think that's why I ended up leaving teaching in particular, because you couldn't provide what kids really, really needed, and what parents really needed. And I think like my perception of parents when I was a teacher is completely different to my perception of parents now as a tutor, and outside of that teaching world, because you do have your blinkers on and you are only exposed to this, where we need to be looking at this, the whole gamut of everything.
Cool. Well, I'm just checking the time. I think we could talk for hours, really.
I think so too.
Is there anything that you want to kind of add before we kind of finish?
I don't know. It's just, there's just so many things.
We'll do
so
it
many
again.
things. There's just so many things you can talk about.
Do you just want to give everyone your business and links and all that jazz where they can find you?
Yes, I am. I was like, who am I? Hang on a minute.
What's my name?
I'm Alysha Griffiths and I own Breakaway Tuition. We do online tutoring and in-person tutoring in the Southern Highlands. But like I've said throughout, like I do a lot of educational consultancy, and there is so many different things that I consider as, you know, the owner of my business, that it's not just the tutoring side that, you know, we want people to sort of come to us to find. But you can find us everywhere. You can find us on Facebook, I know, at Breakaway Tuition. And you can find us on Instagram at Breakaway Tuition. Or our website, breakawaytuition.com.au. So you'll
Facebook's
find us.
The same.
Yeah, Facebook's the same. Everything's just...
See, the consistency is good for our
it really is. Makes it so much easier.
Yeah.